Namaskar and welcome to Daily Global Insights, episode 271. A shout out to our viewers to like this program so it can reach its maximum potential. Today is Tuesday, November the 2nd, and here are the main points. In global news, US and China call for action but make no new pledges at COP26. PM Modi targets net zero emissions by 2070. Russia targets net zero emissions by 2060 and rejects US criticism. Sridharji, namaskar. And as a co-host, hopefully we'll have a cracker of a session today, sir. What are your thoughts on what is playing out at the conference, the climate conference?
Good morning to everybody in the United States. As somebody said, call it good day. So we'll call it good day. But I think the climate...
You're Australian, sir. Say good day.
Okay, no, I'm an American now. So I used to be an Australian. Now I'm an American. So I got to stick to that. Anyways, thank you for that reminder, Sree. What's happening with the in the world of climate accord? It's fairly clear that there are asymmetric set of agreements depending on whether you are a developed nation or a developing nation. But having said that, at least in one area, there is a common theme. All nations agreed, more than 100 nations agreed that there will be no deforestation, beyond 2030. So, which means that the ecosystem and the environment will be preserved rather than cutting down trees and forests around the world. So I think that's one positive development. The second is the conspicuous absence of Russia and China. And Russia and China have not committed to any, new targets, or on the contrary, they have extended from 2050 to 2060 the net zero emissions from the on the greenhouse side, which was not well received by the world. Modi, who believes that India is fairly well advanced, has committed to net zero, in fact, emissions by 2070. So you have this range of different targets coming in, but all augurs well. But there is again no consensus on this climate issue. Clearly, I think we covered this yesterday. There is at least a growing consensus around cutting the coal-based, energy generation, and let us see how that plays out.
And Turkish president, I think is prime minister or president, I'm not sure, Erdogan skips climate summit in a dispute over security arrangements by the United Kingdom. Was UK one of the countries from where he was planning on recalling his ambassador, Sridharji?
Yes, I think UK and United
explains
States.
A lot.
It does. So he's a Turkish president. Turkish president, Mr. Erdogan, believes that the security arrangements, because Britain is the host of this event, they believe that they were not supportive of the security demands that he has placed upon British government. So he decided to skip. In my humble view, he decided to skip because there's no Russia, there is no China, and obviously there's no Iran. So these are his allies and they're absent. So therefore, it's a good excuse for him to not be there.
Biden and Jokowi share concern over Myanmar. Sridharji, Jokowi is Indonesia's president?
Yes, Jokowi is Indonesian president, Jokowi, and Widodo Jokowi. And you remember that Prime Minister Modi met him and broadly had discussions around the trade and partnership. But I think Biden's focus was around Myanmar and the restoration of democracy in Myanmar. If you recall, again, we had covered extensively in DGI, Indonesia and Malaysia were trying to play and Thailand were playing as the anchor roles and mediators with the junta in Myanmar to see whether there can be restoration or there's a timeline for restoration of democracy. So obviously these are the bilateral meetings that take place on the sidelines of the COP26 summit.
And Kishida picks Motegi to replace Secretary General Amari. Ex-Defense Chief Hayashi considered for Japan's foreign minister. This is the new cabinet being formed by Kishida, I guess. Sridharji, is there any significance about the replacement of the Secretary General?
He lost the election for the first time. It's an embarrassment for the LDP.
Oh,
Though LDP won the elections, they lost some very heavyweights in the elections, reflecting a combination of incumbency as well as failed policies of the LDP in terms of addressing the needs around COVID and issues around middle class going through the pandemic. So I think the most appropriate, Motegi is a senior leader within LDP, and he has taken over as what you call the Secretary General of the LDP party. So naturally, they need somebody very strong, so Hayashi-san is coming in to take over as the foreign minister from defense, and I think it's very interesting because of the all geopolitical issues and the importance of having a strong defense and foreign minister. So the switching of the role is just sends you the right signal.
as global deaths from pandemic soar past 5 million, it is believed that a presidential commission set up by Trump weighed $10 trillion reparation money from China, according to a new book to be released by Peter Navarro. Sridharji, Peter Navarro is a very respected economist, and when he released about the election, the Democrats didn't really pan it a whole lot, don't you think?
Well, I think the Peter Navarro was, if you recall, was the negotiator on the trade and tariffs with the Chinese government, and he played hardball, effectively trying to bat for U.S. policies and pull back on some of the asymmetric subsidies that China had imposed. Right on the back of the election, he was doing extensive amount of research around the conduct of the elections. But Democrats were absolutely certain that they're going to, get to the finish line, notwithstanding some telling data published by Peter Navarro. The fact that he had access as one of the White House advisors and representatives, the fact that he had access to some of the work that was going on around that time, it will make a compelling reading as to what exactly the rationale and what were the observations behind this investigation that would have cast some significant issues around the US-China, especially if $10 trillion reparation had been imposed.
And China and Russia revive a push to lift sanctions on North Korea. Sridharji, what changed? Why should the world lift the sanctions on North Korea, according to China and Russia, sir?
Very simple, which is namely to say sanctions don't work, sanctions hurt people. We are the new members. We are the new coalition in the power. There is leadership vacuum. So China and Russia has combined and asserted their right, which is effectively to say we are the leaders. It's time to lift the sanctions. I mean, North Korea has been a good boy, according to them. Not that the world believes in it. So therefore, lift the sanctions. Because remember, there's a significant food crisis. And North Korean president gave a very intriguing response to his people: eat less.
Well, he could start by doing it himself, sir. He could lose a little bit of weight.
He only advises, sir. He doesn't follow.
US monitoring unusual Russian troop movements near Ukraine. Sridharji, this thing flares up every so often, isn't it? A few months ago, I remember reading about, the buildup of the Russian troops along the border of Ukraine. In fact, the president of Ukraine took a drive-by and shared the videos for the whole world to see.
I think what you're witnessing is the leadership vacuum. And what you're also witnessing is constant rumbles by the Russians and Chinese. Doesn't matter whether it is South China Sea, Taiwan Strait, around the north and south of the Japanese islands, and then be it in Ukraine, be it in Crimea, be it in the Pacific, you're beginning to see, or in the Alaskan region, you're beginning to see constant and persistent incursions to test the strength of the United States and the ability of the United States to even, pose some kind of a response to these irritating actions.
And Iran and Hezbollah dominate Bennett discussions with foreign leaders at the CPS 26 Climate Summit. No surprise there. Sridharji, your comments on Bennett's first meeting with many world leaders at the Climate Summit.
Well, I think he seems to have established a very good rapport with many leaders. Sorry.
Bless you.
Many leaders. I'm sorry, with many leaders. And he certainly had a very good meeting with Prime Minister Modi. He has met with several of the European leaders. He certainly made his case heard, and especially as it relates to Iran and Hezbollah. And very important that Germany, France, UK are all aligned on the Iran issue, and Iran has been very flagrant in terms of violation of the IAEA norms. So I think this was it's a platform set up for him, and he seems to have excelled in making sure that his message got heard.
And now let's take a look at India news. Australia now formally recognizes two vaccines, Covishield and Covaxin, made in India, in a big thumbs up to Indian vaccines. India's active COVID cases reduced to 153,776. India fully vaccinates 334 million, and single doses are at 737 million. Impressive numbers all around. Sridharji, this finally, I think they are breaking through barriers put up by corporate pharma giants, sir.
I think that the Covishield and Covaxin have made the day. The volume of vaccines is a reflection. The capacity to manufacture and deliver sustained quality is another feature. India is also teaching to the world the distribution mechanism by way of how do you vaccinate with opening up vaccination centers. I have to say that with a little bit of my time in India, this what they call as the RT-PCR tests and rapid PCR tests, everything is digitized and electronic. It's just an amazing change, by way of conducting these tests, etc. I would assume, based on what we have observed, the vaccination program also ought to be very successful when you look at the numbers.
And PM Modi asserts that India is one of the few countries on track to meet the climate goals and seeks US 1 trillion from world leaders to drive climate agenda. Sridharji, when something like this is made, request of 1 trillion from world leaders, which world leaders are going to step up to the plate, sir? If anything, these people are trying to run down India.
Well, I think that this is not for India, is asking. If you want to achieve this minus 1.5 degrees centigrade goal around the world, it's not going to happen without capital being infused, because there is a substitution that must occur as they move from the traditional hydrocarbons like coal and methane into the alternative energy. And it's not going to come just like this. And there is a very little incentive for the world to move without the world participating in making this transition happen, because that's why it is called Global Climate Accord. So he's asking for $1 trillion of financing to occur to substitute and transform to the alternative platforms, be it solar, be it wind, be it even including water. So I think that he's electric. He's saying this won't happen overnight, and it's going to happen only with the finance coming in. Remember, Mr. Kelly, the czar, the climate czar for Biden, has been going around the world promising financing scenarios. The nations won't finance. They probably will use World Bank or IMF to structure, and including Asia Development Bank, to structure the funding for nations embarking on this program.
And India conducted troop insertion exercise along the LAC in eastern Ladakh. Indian Army troops were dropped from C-130J aircraft of the Indian Air Force in an area located at 14,000 feet. So I think India is also beginning to step up its maneuverings and its exercises along the line of actual control. I guess it's a message intended for the Chinese who are massing across the border. I think this is a good thing to have, showing them that we are also prepared, sir.
Indeed, I think that we talked about, maybe yesterday or on Sunday, we talked about the Alaskan exercise with US, which concluded, which was in the high altitude, cold terrains. Now here in the Ladakh, they are doing this, on the onset of the winter, demonstrating that they can put troops into the high altitude through this intrusion process, demonstrating India is not idle and sitting and watching by.
And Indian hackers targeted China's defense and military departments, according to Global Times. Siddharji, it's about time India paid China back in its own coin. China also uses its surrogates, such as North Korea, to hack into other countries' systems. There is, in fact, a website that you can look at that will tell you constantly at real time how many threats are being directed, by whom, at whom. Very, very interesting stuff, Siddharji. In fact, October 13, 2020, Mumbai went off, at least a major portion of Mumbai, went off grid for 13 hours. And it is believed that it was done by China because China crowed that it can bring down India's power infrastructure before this happened. Siddharji, is this the first time? I thought India has been doing it quietly for a while now.
Well, firstly, I think that this is reported by Global Times, which is usually the Chinese mouthpiece, and the fact that it is reported, India is not going to report that it has had conducted tests and it has had cyber attacks on any opponent nation, but it just is a reflection that every nation is engaged in this game. Everybody is hacking into everybody. Look, I think the Chinese attacks on United States and India and even possibly other countries using cyber technology, has consequences. I mean, these people don't speak about. I mean, it's not that the other countries cannot hack into China. I mean, look at the power crisis, look at the food crisis, look at the COVID crisis. There are no takers for China. There are nobody who is rushing to say, okay, we'll come and help you, China. None. Because of the attitude that China has taken in many of these issues, and it makes its people suffer without any form of communication. You remember we talked about rise in Southeast COVID cases, and that just dissipated. And then now we have got rising cases in Northeast, including stretching into Beijing. And then again, there's no information.
And India and Israel to work on a 10-year roadmap to collaborate and work together in the defense sector. We will continue working together for stronger bilateral ties and a better planet, says Prime Minister Modi. Siddharji, I think this is the first time Prime Minister Modi is meeting Bennett, isn't it?
It's the first time Prime Minister Modi is meeting Naftali Bennett, and it's. I think the meeting was very well set up by External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar. He was just watching by the side as Biden and as Mr. Modi and Mr. Bennett met. And Mr. Bennett, his comments were, "I'm glad at last I have met you, and we should be working together." And remember, Mr. Naftali Bennett is a tech geek, so they can resonate very well because technology is the underpinning transformative agenda of Mr. Modi.
And now let's take a quick look at US news. Tight Virginia race becomes a referendum on Biden presidency. Anti-tax furor becomes the backbone of GOP surge, with Jack Ciattarelli closing the gap. Sridharji, did I say that right? His last name?
Jack Ciattarelli.
Italian American, and he is the one who's challenging Terry McAuliffe, who's a fairly well-known face in Virginia and in fact in national politics. How do you see this thing? I think yesterday we thought that the GOP had a 3% lead, but do you think it is going to shrink or grow today?
Well, there's an interesting case of 300,000 absentee ballots, and there's a belief that Democratic Party is well prepared to launch a whole series of cases on these absentee ballots. Now, that indicates to you that clearly they're worried about the outcome of the Virginia elections. Virginia historically is a very strong Democratic leaning state. Mr. Biden in the presidential elections carried Virginia as an outcome. As far as New Jersey is concerned, that I don't think Jack is likely to win, but he's narrowing the gap. There's always surprises, and he's narrowing the gap on the back of two things. One is mandates, but more importantly, New Jersey has lots and lots of small businesses. It is the tax increases that people are worried about.
And we will see tomorrow. I think today is November 4th, I think, is when everybody is going to elections. And we will know in a couple of days what happens to the gubernatorial races in New Jersey and Virginia. And in other news, Political games by progressives will not work. We will need longer time to fix the budget, says Senator Joe Manchin. Viewers, in connection with this, we've already done one video of Ilhan Omar, who is one of the leading progressive lights, and we are going to do on AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. That will air in the next couple of days, so stay tuned as we go through taking a critical look at the upcoming Democratic leadership, and then we will be doing the same thing at the upcoming Republican leadership. Sridharji, your thoughts? There was a interview that Trump gave to a radio station where he said something very interesting, sir. I'd like your inputs on that.
I think he just basically said that the interview that you're referring to, if I'm correct, which is namely, once upon a time, Israel used to own Congress and Israel used to be the dominating influence given the strategic partnership that exists. Now, with the advent of the progressives, Israel has been relegated to backseat. The progressives have taken over. That's one of the radio station interviews that I heard. The second one is obviously around the whole thing around taxes, and it implies that Biden is giving everything away to China. Those are the two things that I heard, sir.
And Cory Bush says that Manchin opposition to Build Back America plan is anti-black. We must remember that Cory Bush is also one of the leading progressives, and somehow there is a mischief, in my opinion, being done to tie BLM with Joe Manchin's opposition. That's how I see it, Sridharji. Your thoughts?
Well, Cory Bush leads each one of these candidates lead a specific agenda. Cory Bush leads the defund police agenda. Remember that she is supposed to have raised money from outside, Chicago and outside Minneapolis, notably Chicago, for the defund police campaign. So she's the architect of that. So anything and everything she ties to the black votes. So she says Manchin not supporting is anti-black.
And business owners pushing states to pass more pro-police initiatives as crimes rise. No surprise there. In fact, I think we have reported in Daily Global Insight about how in the downtown San Francisco area, many of the big superstores are shutting shop because the police have a policy of not arresting anyone who commits theft and small crimes less than $900. So this is something that was expected. It's only going to make the downtown property suffer, sir.
Well, I think, overall, leave alone downtown, the general rise in crime across many areas is very profound and very visible. We have at least covered 2 or 3 instances where we have reported in the ETGI that people, including black communities, when their shops were looted, when the security called for the police, when the security called the business owners who happened to be black, they immediately gave consent and permission to call the police. And when the security departments, which oversee these stores remotely, when they called the police said, we can't go there. It is inaccessible. So what's happening is that this cross-section of both downtown and certain critical areas where there are shopping districts, even within the suburban communities, you find that the crime rate is perpetuating. Basically because you can't be arrested. There's no cop. There's no law enforcement, and which is creating problems generally across the communities. And therefore, they're saying that there is a need to make this police better and make the police enforce law.
And various states nullify vaccine mandates, which in general is opposed by many Americans now, the mandates themselves. Christmas 2021 could be the most expensive crisis as inflation and supply chain crisis lingers. Sir, this supply chain crisis, it's not limited to China alone, isn't it? I mean, the US gets its products from various places, but there's a general tanker supply movement and other things associated with this, isn't it?
Well, I think there are, we should probably do a separate session on this, but just give you 2 things. One is there is obviously problems around logistics, transportation mandates, etc. I just also heard that two big ports, Long Beach as well as the San Francisco, especially the Long Beach, they have this interesting stacking concept, which is they will not stack containers beyond 8 feet because it just presents bad optics. And in situations like this, that seems to be one of the big challenges. They have ability to store enough containers, but they have this optics rule, which is namely you don't stack containers beyond 8 feet. It sounds absolutely ridiculous. This is over and above the issues of some political maneuvering that also goes on. And there's close to, I think, somewhere between 45 to 60 ships around the Californian area. They are within 66 miles of the ports, not coming into the mainland for unloading the cargo.
Well, Mr. Gavin Newsom, who harbors ambitions of a higher role in the politics of United States, if you don't fix this thing, it is going to come and haunt you. And let's take a look at markets. Stock futures are a little changed after S&P marks out a record close at 4,613.17. Crypto, US 10-year T-bonds and oil trading within the bands. S&P year-to-date performance is at 22.83% and 1-year anniversary at a record 39.38%. Sir, your thoughts on where the market is headed today, and then we will call it a wrap.
Well, I think that the markets will always gyrate based on a little bit of the earnings, but we are at record highs already. 22.83% for S&P and 17% for Dow, and somewhere around 17% for Nasdaq is stellar numbers. This is stellar numbers on the back of 2020 and 2019, and you can see on a 1-year basis the S&P is up close to 40%. So we expect the year, as we have said before, 2021 to be a bumper year, as was 2019. Again, increase in 2020. I think that we'll finish the market. I think S&P is around 4,600. The original estimate was 4,500 for the year, and they upticked it based on the positive economic momentum. So the target was 4,700 for S&P, but we are somewhere near that already, with about less than 2 months left.
And that brings us to a close of today's episode. We'll be back not tomorrow, but next Monday, as Sridharji has some travel plans. And we will be again coming back same time, 5:30 p.m. IST on Monday. Thanks for watching, and do like, share, and subscribe to our channels. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.